I want to talk about this gentleman. That's FDR ski. And this was written, by the way, by Michael Moore wrote this about FDR. He said, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt made plans to run for a third term in 1940, that's this guy, most popular president in the history of our country. He brought us Social Security, the New Deal, put money in the pockets of workers, saved capitalism.
Pie in the sky guy.
Pie in the sky. And they elected him president until he died. That's what happens when you legislate with the people in mind instead of the donor class in mind. So, so when he was deciding to run for a third term, he wanted to drop his vice president, which is a guy named John Nance Garner, because his vice president was too conservative and was working against him. Well, here's what it says here. It says, both because Garner disapproved of Roosevelt running again, his vice president disapproved of FDR running again, and Garner's opposition to much of the New Deal. So instead, Roosevelt chose Secretary of Agriculture Henry Wallace as his vice president. That's who he wanted. So I guess things were different back then. Like, you had to get voted on by the delegates, right? You couldn't just pick your vice president. They had to, like, okay it. That's what it seems like to me back then, Ski, because look what happened. However, many of Garner's fellow conservative Democrats, including the party's reactionary wing based in the South, despised Henry Wallace for his liberalism and attempted to block his nomination at the convention before Roosevelt's arrival. The book American Dreamer, A Life of Henry A. Wallace, describes what happened next. Do you want to know what happened next? FDR sent a frickin' letter to the convention. This was the letter that he had written. You want to hear it?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be written today and should be written today, which is why I'm going to read it today on the show, because everybody, the electorate and the elected Democrats, need to hear this. Here it is. Franklin D. Roosevelt letter to the Democratic Convention, July 18th, 1940. Members of the convention. In the century in which we live, the Democratic Party has received the support of the electorate only when the party, with absolute clarity, has been the champion of progressive and liberal policies and principles of government.
When we lead with our values and have opportunity. Oh, that's not in the letter.
No, he says when we lead with our values and we are the party of good jobs and everyone gets a fair shot if they're willing to work hard. That's not what he said. That's not what FDR said.
Did FDR say anything about a purity test?
Oh, FDR doing his goddamn purity test. That's FDR doing his goddamn purity test. So he says the Democratic Party only receives support when it's been the champion of progressive and liberal policies and principles in government, not privileges. The party has failed. This is FDR. The party has failed consistently when, through political trading and chicanery, it has fallen into the control of those interests, personal and financial, which think in terms of dollars instead of in terms of human values. Holy crap, Ski. This guy sounds like Bernie Sanders sounds. This is exactly what Bernie Sanders had been saying. He said it right to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's face.
Right.
At that speech. We played it in the other video where he said if the Democrats do not stimulate a high voter turnout and get people enthused, they will lose. That's exactly what happened. And how do you get there? You offer them something that they deserve. Health care, education, a fair tax structure, and a job that can get them in the middle class. If you can't do that, what is the point of having a country? What's the point of having a country if our country can't guarantee health care, education, and a job. The Republican Party has made its nominations this year at the dictation of those who, we all know, always place money ahead of human progress. So nothing's changed. The Democratic Convention, as appears clear from the events of today, is divided on this fundamental issue. So the party was divided back then, even when it had a strong leader like FDR. Until the Democratic Party, through this convention, makes overwhelmingly clear it stands in favor of social progress and liberalism and shakes off all the shackles of control fastened upon it by forces of conservatism, reaction, and appeasement, it will not continue its march of victory. Ron, is this not blowing your mind a little?
Yeah, I mean, it's like he laid out a ground map that could have assured victory for a really, really long time, and they sort of lost their way at some point.
It's exactly the same thing that's happening right now. Oh, isn't it? And isn't it something? It was right after a huge economic crash brought on by the stupid donor class. So here he is again trying to say, hey, we have to be progressive policies, actually work for everyone. There's enough to go around in the richest country in the world. There's enough to go around. Rich people get to be super rich, and workers get to have a comfortable living. That's what he's saying. And he's saying if you don't want to advocate for that, you're going to lose.
I like the overwhelmingly clear part.
Overwhelmingly clear.
That's really important.
The Democrats have to make it overwhelmingly clear. You know why they have to do that? Because if they don't, they become victim to a demagogue, a charismatic demagogue like Donna Tanahans. That's exactly what happened. Because it wasn't overwhelmingly clear. In fact, it was clear the opposite. As they were trying to get working people to vote for them, Barack Obama was full-throated, top of his lungs, trying to pass another job-crushing trade deal. Why? Because it would benefit the fucking corporations and the donor class. That's why. That TPP didn't do jack shit for anybody except rich people, corporations, and patent holders. In fact, it took all the power away from the regular people.
It actually seems that when Donald Trump says "Make America Great Again," he's referencing FDR's policies.
Yes, that's what that does seem like that's what he's talking about. Because this is FDR did save capitalism. It is without question that certain political influences pledged to reaction in domestic affairs and to appeasement in foreign affairs have been busily engaged behind the scenes in the promotion of discord since this convention convened. Under these circumstances, I cannot, in all honor, and will not, merely for political expediency, go along with the cheap bargaining and political maneuvering which have brought about party dissension in this convention. Gets better. Hold on. He's getting ready. He's throwing it down. He's putting putting a mark in the sand. A line in the sand. Line in the sand.
Line in the sand.
It is best not to straddle ideals. Oh, God, I love this guy. In these days of danger, when democracy must be more than vigilant, there can be no connivance with the kind of politics which has internally weakened nations abroad before the enemy has struck from without. It is best for America to have the fight out here and now. So he's calling for a fight. He's calling for a fight with those conservative Democrats. Let's do it, and let's do it now, and let's settle this shit for once and for all. I wish to give the Democratic Party the opportunity to make its historic decision clearly and without equivocation. Its decision on whether you're going to stand for the people or not. That party must go wholly one way or wholly the other.
Amen. The whole thing with all this and why it's so important to evoke FDR right now, there is a time in politics like anything else, there's a time to stand your ground and a time to compromise. We're in a stand your ground time. We're in a stand your ground time. And if you're going to disagree with that, you haven't been paying attention to any of this nation's history. You haven't been paying attention to what happened right before FDR happened. We're at a revolutionary time. So no, this isn't a time of compromise. And no matter how many baby boomers tell you that, they're wrong, and it's not 1960 anymore. We're in a revolutionary time. Now's the time to stand our ground.